Hey, David Rathoff here, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about some things to consider as you're getting started in a programming career or learning to code. Um, just some things to kind of keep in mind that could really inform a lot of the things you decide to learn or the directions you decide to go. So, and this is part of an ongoing series I'm doing on getting started in programming and learning to code. So, if you're interested in more videos about that, please click the subscribe button or take a look at the other videos in this channel. Um, so, yeah, a few things to keep in mind as you're getting started or thinking about starting into a programming career is thinking about a few big picture things. So, do think about which industry you're interested in going into. So, I mean, just to throw some different directions out there, you could be looking at going into like game development, or you could be looking into working on, web apps or AI, machine learning kind of stuff. And those kind of choices can have a big impact on ultimately like the things that you learn, the languages that you choose, the frameworks that you learn about. So, and with that, there's some other things to consider. Like, so for example, I've been a big gamer for my whole life, and I was actually pretty interested in games, and that's kind of what got me into programming initially. And I just had kind of assumed, like, hey, like game programming is probably the career that I'm going to choose. But as I learned more about how that industry worked, especially at the time when I was getting into my career, which is, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, 15, 20 years ago, it actually wasn't a great industry to work in. Things like pulling, long hours all the time as you were crunching for even like the last 3 to 6 months working on a game was pretty normal. I think it's still pretty normal. Like, working 60 to 80 hour weeks is not that uncommon for extended periods of time, working nights and weekends. So it's good to just kind of get out there and do research on the actual industry that you're heading into and see if it's the kind of place or the kind of situation or the kind of environment you want to be in. And that can vary a lot from one industry to another, or even like size of company. Like, if you're working at a huge company, you're probably going to be forced to specialize in one really specific thing, versus if you're working for a smaller company, like a startup or something, you may be doing all kinds of things. And part of it's just going to be interest. Like, are you interested in really getting hyper focused on one thing, or are you a generalist and you want to, have your hands in a bunch of different things at the same time? So yeah, just try to get some rough idea of what direction it is that you're heading in, and that'll help you with a few different things. So for one, it'll make sure that you're investing in things that are going to help you out. It'll probably inform even what locations you're looking at moving to for your job. So for example, if you were going to go into the game industry, you may end up in LA or San Diego or Seattle, or basically wherever the main game development studios are that you're interested in. You may be lucky and be able to work remotely, which is a whole other topic. I'll probably do a video on here in a bit, but it can really make a big difference. Like, I'm originally from the Midwest, and I ended up moving to Silicon Valley to work for my first 6 or 7 years in my career, and have continued to work with companies in that area. And I'm doing basically web development with or software engineering, web development kind of stuff for companies in that area, startups and companies that when I started with them were startups. So anyway, figuring out what it is you're actually interested in working on can even affect where it is you're going to be living. So it's a pretty big thing to kind of at least start thinking about early on. And then for the technical side, it can have a pretty big impact on everything from like what kind of computer you want to use. Like, it may be, you may end up working in an environment that's like all Macs or something, so it may just be easier for you to start getting used to working on Macs, or maybe you're going into a field where everybody uses Linux, and so maybe you really just want to start digging deep into Linux, which I'd really kind of personally recommend for anybody, but that's my bias. And if you're going to be doing, I don't know, like Java or something like that, it may not matter. Like maybe Windows is a standard setup for people. I'm not even really sure these days. So yeah, it can totally affect, like, the operating system that you're using. It can definitely affect the language you're using. So like if you're getting into web development type stuff, you're going to be working on web apps. JavaScript is a likely language you're going to want to learn. Ruby is pretty common. It kind of runs the gamut, but you'll just want to look at what the most popular languages are for the areas that you're going into. It could also affect like the frameworks that you're using. So like, for example, I do Ruby. So like Ruby on Rails is the oldest and most popular, basically the most popular framework for that. But really any language that you're using is going to have some kind of really popular framework around it. And as you're getting started, it's best to probably focus on the most popular language and eventually the most popular framework for that, just because that'll increase your odds of where you can work. It'll just open up more doors. If you're fortunate and that you're there is something that you're interested in that's not like the most popular thing, but that's what you're going to be using, go ahead and focus on that. And that's great if you know exactly what you want to do, and that's where you should invest your time. But so I would say just kind of keep these things in mind as you're learning. And honestly, when you're learning like the basics, the absolute basics of just like how to write some basic code and get it to run and all those kinds of things, you don't have to know these. You don't have to have answers to these questions yet, but it's something you should be thinking about as you're getting closer and closer to starting to actually look for work. So yeah, thanks for joining me in this video. And if you're interested in more videos on this topic, I'm doing a whole series on this, so hit that subscribe button, and thanks for joining me. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, please click the subscribe button down below to be notified about new videos. Also, if you're interested in helping out the channel, I have links in the description to my Patreon page, as well as Amazon links to all the gear that I use to make these videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.